The person that we're going to be speaking to is Tracey Lauriault. Now, Tracey is from Ireland. She's coming to us via Skype, and she will be sharing a perspective on information. Tracey?
Hi there, how are you doing?
I'm good, there you are. Thanks for coming across the pond via Skype.
Thank you so much for having me. I have a lot of respect for what the ONN does, your members, and what civil society does in Canada overall, so it's really great.
Excellent. Well, we're looking forward to hearing from you. In fact, I was just sort of talking about what a very hot topic open data is, and that you'll be talking to us about incredibly complicated things like geospatial models and cyber cartography. And yes, in fact, an even hotter topic than that, which is open data.
And there will be exam, and it will be done in 5 minutes.
You know, we had a red carpet event here in Toronto recently where open data was all the buzz. There's a big movie, Fifth Estate, happening.
Yes.
So everyone's, it's very front of mind. And of course, it is an issue for the nonprofit. So we're thrilled to have you here to sort of connect those dots for us. So why don't you just roll with it, take it away, Tracey.
Sounds great. Thanks very much, everybody. And I wish I could see you, but perhaps another time. So I was asked to come and talk to you a little bit about open data. So what I thought I'd do really quickly is to talk to you about why data are important. You generally know that, but nonetheless, highlight their political nature, discuss with you my right, your right, our right to access them, what can be done with them, what open data can mean for the sector, and how the sector, the third sector, can get involved, the social sector, environmental sector, and so on can get involved in this, and why you should. So first of all, why are data important? Well, how big's the third sector and civil society? How big's the ONN membership? How many NGOs and charities are there? Where's social housing? How old is it? How does government spend? Where does it spend? Who does it spend on and who does it not spend on? What are the results of basic food inspections in your neighborhood and how do you find out about those? What are your politicians doing? Where are they spending their time? Are they in the House? How many days are in the House? What did they vote on? What did they not vote on? Where are they spending their money? What research is funded and what are the results of that research and where are those results? And what NGOs have been cut in the last 10, 15 years, who gained and who lost? These are all things that you can answer with data, and these are all the kinds of things that governments at all the different levels, the types of data that they collect to do what it is that they do, which is to govern the country and to make decisions. Now, why are data political? Oh, it's just numbers, it's just facts, it's just a spreadsheet, but actually they tell stories about us and they help us tell stories about who it is that we serve. And in your case, a whole variety of different types of people based on the ONN membership. So let's look at this. So we know that in Canada, for instance, there are groups of people locally, primarily municipalities, that are organizing around issues to make data accessible, to make them usable, to ensure that government releases them under unrestricted user licenses, that they be free, that they be organized and aggregated into geographies that are useful, such as wards, such as federal electoral districts, such as neighborhoods, such as provinces and territories, that these data be described so that you can find them, and when you find them, you can read something about them. And then these groups of people go about developing applications. So whether it be a mobile app, or some kind of online map like Social Planning Network of Ontario and others have been engaged in doing for quite some time. But they're also really important. You have to consider who produces these data, what do they do with them, how do they control them, who pays for them. When we look at the census, I think that discussion became very important and we learned something about it. What do these data say about us? And what are the issues around open government and which governments are open and not? I think these are some interesting political questions that are related to data. Also, what are your rights in terms of being able to access these data? If we think, first of all, that who paid for these data in the first place, we can argue that we all did through taxation. We can also argue that the government collects these data already to govern the territory, to govern us, to govern natural resources. So it is simply part of the administration of government. If that's the case, and if we have paid for them, and if our job in civil society in the third sector is to govern, co-govern, deliberate with, do evidence-based planning and serve who it is that we serve, then that means we should also have access to these data. It also means that all this scientific data and statistical data, administrative data, taxation data, data about you, data that you produce, data about who funds you and what's been funded and so on, should all be made available to us. Of course, there's privacy issues that needs to be dealt with, and we know very well how to operationalize those issues, and we know there's public security issues, and we all know very well how to do that. All we're asking is that these data be made available so that you can find them easily, you can use them easily, you can you can do some one-stop shopping with no fuss, no muss. And the whole point of this movement across Canada, it's now starting to happen with the provincial governments and of course with the federal government, is deliberative democracy. We're part of a democratic system, and we need to be able to have the same information government and private sector has about services, about the environment, about civil society, government, and so on, so that we can be on the same playing field. Well, once we have these data, what can we actually do with them? So if we start thinking about some useful examples, so there's a great little app out in BC called Waterly. It looks at rainwater amounts, it looks at water restriction policies, and it will tell you when's the right time to water your lawn. Well, that's good environmental planning and policy. Transit data can be used to tell us where the bus is going, where the bus doesn't go, who it serves, who it doesn't serve, who can afford it, and who can't. And you can take those data and mix them with your public policy type of information and use that at transit committee or poverty committee and so on. There's a group in Montreal called Rapplique. They've been going out in the streets, we're talking geeks and people with serious physical disabilities, actually doing an audit of which buildings are accessible or not, and taking the results of that audit and putting it online in maps. And they receive a basic prize from something called a hackathon, which is kind of an activist event that was called Hacking Health. And they got these groups of people together to produce this type of app. We also know that in the city of Montreal, where there's been quite a bit of corruption, there's been some hacking of what we call procurement data and spending data, and in an event called Hackons la Corruption. Again, these are types of events that you have technologically savvy people coming together to develop tools and apps and to analyze some data to think more about issues related to public policy and to advance a variety of public policy issues on all kinds of things. So you just have to think about some of the questions that you would like answered in your organization, and that will help you think about the kinds of data you would need and the kinds of applications you would like to have. Now, what does open data mean for the sector? Here's an ideal situation. It would mean one-stop shopping. It would mean going to a catalog, like a library catalog, searching and finding the data you need, organized in the way that you want, at the level of geography you like, for free, and organized in such a way that you can access them under an unrestricted license. It also means that you know more, that the possibility of you knowing more about the sector, who you serve, what government's up to, where government spends and doesn't spend, and so on and so forth. And also big projects like fracking or pipelines, you would actually be able to access all of the information related to that. It means that you can also bring data into your processes so that you can better inform things and advance some of the different issues that you have. So how do you get involved in this big kind of project? And these will be my last points. Well, you need to find out what's going on in your jurisdictions with regards to open data. You need to make friends with your local municipal, provincial, or federal CIO, and you need to know who that person is. And if there isn't an open data strategy that serves you, you need to make one happen and discuss it, either as an ONN or a group of people within your jurisdiction who are looking at particular kinds of data. You need to learn about the kinds of open data initiatives that are in your area and what kind of data are in those portals. And if it's not the data that you need, that you find useful, then you have the right to ask for data that are useful to you and have those data put up into the portal. You need to also, and it would be really helpful that you would go to your local, what we call hackathons, and they're kind of events where geeks and nerds like myself come together and play with data and develop things. Well, geeks and nerds like me aren't experts like you in your fields. So for us to be able to help you answer your questions, we need to know what your questions are and your problems are, and we need to look at some of the data you have or want, and then together we can help you develop some apps that can help start answering some of your questions. Also, you can start working with local groups, these same types of activists, to help them collect data on issues that are important to you. Anyway, overall, I think, I've given you just a small little snippet of what is possible. I think Ted Hildebrandt from Community Development Halton will be speaking a little bit later, and he's been involved with data quite extensively, and you can talk to him a bit more. But it's just an overview for you so that you can know that these movements exist and that there's a place for you to be involved. In fact, at the moment, ONN and most community-based organizations and environmental organizations are not involved in this space. If you want it to serve you and you want it to meet your needs, there needs to be some of you, not all of you, because not all of you can, want, have the time, et cetera, to do it, but some of you need to be involved and be paying attention to these types of issues. And I'd be more than happy to introduce you to people in your local jurisdictions. By all means, my information's available. And even though I'm way, way over here in Ireland, I clearly have some affinity for back home, and would love to be able to help you out on this endeavor, because I think it's very interesting times. And if we think of the evidence for decision making for democracy rallies that happened across the country just this week, I think it's more important now than ever that we start getting involved in these issues. And I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Tracey, completely fantastic information. Thank you. I just wondered if you could kind of frame or put context to this for us by comparing how the for-profit sector accesses open data compared to the nonprofit. You've sort of mentioned that you think the time is nigh to do this, to get in there, but I mean, maybe just a little bit more detail on they're using it. That's what I assume, is that the profits are all over this and we're not, but is that true, or?
Well, first of all, they have money to pay for it, right? If public data are available, they are already the ones who can afford it. So they can afford satellite data, and they can afford software, and they have the capacity to use these data and so on. So that's one part.
Yeah.
The other part is you just think simply, how does Starbucks know where the sunny side of the street is, which demographic they're going to serve, and where to locate their stores, and in proximity to what other services do they want to be to maximize their profits? Right. We could say that that same kind of thinking is the kind of thinking that we can consider in an ideal world about the delivery of services, I think, in the third sector. Yeah. If you think of journalism and big media organizations actually are resellers of a lot of Canada's statistical data. So they're very heavily involved in that way. And some data resellers, such as DMTI, actually take data and kind of repackage them in a way so that they're useful to you, because sometimes the statistical agencies release stuff that's not very useful. So they're actually taking government data, repackaging it and reselling it back to you. What open data advocates are pushing is that yes, that service is helpful for some, but we want data to be accessible, organized, free, and under unrestricted licenses, so that you just go to the catalog and get these data and use them, and you don't have to pay for them, negotiate with them, haggle over them, bargain, whether you should serve somebody on the front lines or buy data.
Wow.
I think that's what we're arguing for.
Okay, great. Well, in the absence of large research budgets in the nonprofit, I think it's safe to say that geeks and nerds like really good coffee, Okay. All right, that would be my tip.
And chocolate bars.
Yeah. Tracey, it's been a delight. Thank you very much. You did great on Skype. Awesome.